Exactly, because we want to do our bit and we want to help others do theirs. But there's also some things the government can do, and we'd like to see in the Environment Bill, for example, labelling so that customers can choose a dishwasher, taps, washing machines, and know that they're water efficient.
That only comes, that's once in a while, isn't it, when you buy a new appliance, that would really be of benefit. I mean, there's a central point, which is that you could pay out less in dividends and spend more on fixing the leaks.
Well, we're spending a huge amount on fixing the leaks. We're investing a huge amount in infrastructure for the future. We recognise there's a big challenge ahead to invest to ensure we have the clean, resilient, sustainable supplies that we want, and that requires investment, and we are delivering it.
Christine McGurty, Chief Executive of Water UK, thank you.
It's coming up to 2 minutes to 7, and there's certainly been plenty of water coming out of the sky. Is that going to continue?
Yeah, you're right.
Thomas Schaffenacker's here.
Yeah, good morning. The last 2-3 days have been not particularly pleasant, damp at the very least, and heavy rain at times. But, that's all changing now, and the weekend is actually looking promising. And I think it's going to be a really fine weekend for most of us, because it's not going to be too warm. There'll be plenty of sunshine around. I'd say for a lot of us, just right. But in the short term, a lot of cloud this morning, and this afternoon it looks as though it's still going to be pretty showery at times across many eastern parts of the UK. So from eastern Scotland, the northeast of England, Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, down to East Anglia, and in one or two other parts of the country, still a chance of some showers. But sunny spells will develop this afternoon, and the temperature's modest for the time of year. We're talking around about 20 degrees in London and maybe 16 in Belfast. And then into the weekend, it'll turn a little bit warmer. Back to you.
Thomas, thank you very much. Now, this weekend on Radio 4, a word from Greta Thunberg.
On BBC Radio 4.
To address the United Nations General Assembly is something you probably only get to do once in your lifetime.
Greta Thunberg looks back on an extraordinary year.
I've never been angry in public, but this time I've decided that I have to make the most out of the speech.
The fight for action on climate change through the eyes of a frontline campaigner.
I need to say things I will be able to stand by for the rest of my life, so that I won't look back and regret that I didn't say enough.
Summer with Greta on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds. Tomorrow night at 8.
In the next hour here, what will lane etiquette be like in socially distanced swimming?
You're listening to Today on BBC Radio 4 with Martha Carney and Michelle Hussein. It's 7 o'clock on Friday, the 10th of July. The headlines this morning. Charities have warned that dementia sufferers are enduring a hidden catastrophe in care homes, with lockdown accelerating their decline. The 14-day quarantine rule for people arriving in the UK ends today if they're coming from countries on approved lists. There's to be a review to see if police in England and Wales are misusing their powers when dealing with people from ethnic minorities. The BBC News is read by Chris Aldridge.
Charities say dementia sufferers in care homes are deteriorating mentally and physically because they're being denied family visits during lockdown. They're calling for relatives to be designated as key workers to enable them to be regularly tested for coronavirus, which would allow them to visit care homes and help look after loved ones. Sandra Berg reports.
For some care home residents with severe dementia, family carers are their voice and their memory, as well as helping to look after them. With lockdown that stopped, and many say their relative's condition has worsened. Like Rosie, who saw her mother a fortnight ago for the first time in months.
She was quite slumped over in a wheelchair. I was worried about her, to be honest. It took me a long time to get her to respond to me. I think there's been quite a rapid change to how she seems in herself since I last saw her.
The number of deaths from dementia alone, not coronavirus, has risen over the last few months. Now the Health Secretary is promising to allow visits again. Leading dementia charities have urged him to designate family carers as key workers so they can be regularly tested for COVID and, wearing PPE, go into the care homes once more. They've warned of a hidden catastrophe, the deterioration in mental and physical health of dementia patients. The Department for Health and Social Care said it would set out guidance shortly to carefully and safely allow visiting in care homes It said the priority was to protect staff and residents.
From today, travellers arriving in the UK from dozens of countries will no longer have to self-isolate for 2 weeks. However, Scotland has said it will keep the quarantine rule in place for countries with a higher prevalence of COVID-19 than its own. The Foreign Office is also cautioning against taking cruise holidays. More details from John McManus.
From this morning, people arriving from Spain, France, Italy, Belgium, Germany and more than 60 other countries will not have to quarantine when they arrive in England, Wales or Northern Ireland. However, if you arrive from any of those countries within the last 2 weeks, you will still be expected to complete your period of self-isolation. The Scottish Government has also chosen a slightly different list of exemptions, meaning anyone arriving there from Spain, for example, still has to follow the quarantine rules. Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon warned people not to try to get around the restrictions by travelling via English airports. Meanwhile, the Foreign Office has advised against all travel on cruise ships, acting, it says, on advice from Public Health England. The cruise ship company Carnival, which operates both Cunard and P&O cruises, said its ships would remain in port until the autumn, and it would use the time to further enhance its COVID-19 prevention measures.
The US has set another daily record for new coronavirus cases at more than 65,000 over the past 24 hours. 1,000 people died with COVID-19 in the same period. There's been a spike in infections in recent days, particularly in the south and west. The policing watchdog for England and Wales is launching a review of cases where racial discrimination may have been a factor. Figures show that stop and search powers are 9 times more likely to be used against black people than against white people. Our Home Affairs correspondent Danny Shaw reports.
The Independent Office for Police Conduct is currently investigating a series of cases in London, Birmingham and Greater Manchester in which it's alleged police used excessive force and in some cases tasers against black men. The IOPC is also looking into claims of racial profiling after the athlete Bianca Williams and her partner, who are both black, were handcuffed and searched by police during a vehicle stop. The Director General of the watchdog, Michael Lockwood, says cases where race discrimination may have played a part are now to become a focus of its work. He says the organisation aims to develop a body of evidence to identify systemic issues and ways to improve policing practice. The IOPC will also examine how officers treat ethnic minority victims of crime and if race-hate offences are taken seriously enough.
The former Transport Secretary Chris Grayling is expected to become chairman of the Intelligence and Security Committee after the Prime Minister approved its new members. The committee hasn't met since the general election, leading to accusations that the government is delaying publication of a report on alleged Russian interference in British politics. Here's our political correspondent, Nick Eardley.
The process of setting up the committee has been controversial, with opposition parties accusing the Prime Minister of deliberately stalling to avoid scrutiny. Members have to be signed off by number 10. Boris Johnson's approved list includes 2 former Cabinet Ministers, the former Environment Secretary, Theresa Villiers, and the former Transport Secretary, Chris Grayling. A majority of the committee will be Conservative MPs. Sources say Mr Grayling is likely to be elected chair, but concerns are likely to be raised about impartiality. The committee will be able to meet again after MPs approve the nominations on Monday and the Lords sign off their one member. That will pave the way for publication of the long-delayed report on Russian interference in British politics.
MPs have warned there's a serious risk that parts of England will run out of water within the next 20 years unless urgent action is taken. The Public Accounts Committee said it was wholly unacceptable that 3 billion litres of water was still being lost every day through leaky pipes. More details from our environment correspondent Claire Marshall.
Today's report is the latest to highlight the critical state of the nation's water supply, which is being caused by a heating climate and growing population, coupled with dwindling supply and ageing infrastructure. The Public Accounts Committee says people in England and Wales use about 14 billion litres of water a day, 1/5 of which is wasted through leaky pipes. It's accusing the government and regulators of taking too ponderous an approach to improving infrastructure. The MPs say the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs has shown a lack of leadership on the issue. The committee's report calls for water companies, which were privatised in 1989, to be ranked on their performance and for a coordinated national message to encourage people not to waste water. The government says it's already taking a tougher approach to poor performance and finding ways to increase supply.
A notorious gangster in India has been killed by police a day after he was arrested. Officers say Vikas Dubey was shot after trying to escape when the police vehicle he was travelling in had an accident. He'd been on the run for nearly a week after his gang shot dead 8 policemen who were attempting to arrest him in Uttar Pradesh. Vikas Dubey had been accused of multiple counts of murder, kidnapping and extortion. President Macron of France has said the spire of Notre Dame Cathedral, which was destroyed in last year's fire, should be replaced with an identical structure. His decision puts an end to speculation that the roof and spire could be rebuilt to a modern design. Hugh Schofield reports from Paris.
Shortly after the fire, President Macron appeared to hint that he favoured a new modern design for the destroyed spire, but now he's changed his mind. He said that he supports the conclusions of a committee of experts, which in its report says the best option is to rebuild following the exact 19th century designs of the old spire. The committee also favours rebuilding the roof as before with the same wooden frame. The decision not to innovate is a recognition that any new design would eat up time going to competitive tender, and the President wants the cathedral open again by 2024.
The first female soldier has joined the American Army Special Forces Unit, the Green Berets, which specialises in counter-insurgency and reconnaissance work. The woman hasn't been named, but it is known that she's a reservist in the National Guard. She's said to have excelled during the 53-week qualification course. The government of Barbados is drawing up plans to combat the slump in tourism by allowing people from around the world to live there for 12 months while working remotely. The island enjoys about 3,000 hours of sunshine a year. The Prime Minister, Maya Amor-Motley, said it was the perfect place for those who didn't need to be in their offices.
So tempting. It's 7:09. Now, it's what many of us have dreamed of, doing exercise without having to peer at an instructor on a screen, going for a swim in your local pool. Though, like quite a few people, I imagine, I've rather overdone my lockdown exercise and am limping rather than jogging. So, self-inflicted injuries to one side, how safe is it going to be to return to gyms, to swimming pools when they open on July the 25th? That's open-air ones on the 11th. Well, we can find out what kind of preparations have been made, in some parts of the country at any rate, by talking to Nina Jeffries, who's co-owner of PB Gym in Plymouth, and also to Mark Sesman, CEO of GLL. They run 270 leisure facilities across the UK on behalf of local authorities. That's under the Better brand. Good morning to you both.
Morning.
Good morning, Martha.
And Nina, starting with you, you've got a relatively small gym, haven't you? So I guess that poses particular problems.
Yes, we do. Just a small correction. We're actually based in Teignmouth, which is about 45, 50 miles away from Plymouth. But,
all right,
it's
sorry about that.
It's fine, don't worry. Yeah, it does pose a bit of a problem for us because of our size, but we're ready to open. We've put a lot of measures in place ahead of this news that we received yesterday.
What kind of things?
We've got rid of some equipment. We've bought new equipment so we can space it out more easily, so we've made quite a heavy investment in terms of kit. We've put one-way systems in place. We've got extra cleaning stations, we've got PPE for staff, we've got more regular deep cleans, that sort of thing, just along the government guidelines, but a little bit extra where we can.
And turning to you now, Mark, you run a lot of swimming pools, including the former Olympic one in London and Lidos and so on. So how's swimming going to work?
Okay, well, actually, as I think a lot of people realise, swimming in the water itself is considered to be very COVID secure because chlorine kills the virus. But obviously, we've got to make sure that people are safe outside the water and to cut the interaction between people. So the systems that we're operating, actually, I think are going to make swimming even better than it has been before because we're forced to ask you to book. You're going to ask you to come beach ready, which means you will have your costume on under your clothes, and then you have your timed slot for your swimming, the lanes will be double the width and half the number of people in the pool. And then afterwards you can use the change room, have a hot shower, and then go home. And we're using what
that bit about the lanes, I think a lot of people will welcome. If you can get quite a lot of aggro, can't you, swimming up and down, people getting in your way.
Well, we're hoping this is the end of lane rage, because now there'll only ever be a certain number of people in the pool, and people will be graded by their ability into much wider lanes with fewer people in them. So be patient with us, really, because it'll be slightly harder to get your booking, but once you've got it, you've got much more space and time to yourself, and we think it'll be a much better experience. But it's a partnership for COVID safety and security. We've got to keep our staff safe, we've got to keep our customers safe. We ask customers to make sure that they've got hand gel with them, to make sure they respect social distancing in and out of the pool, and when they leave, to leave, not to go back for a coffee or whatever. We want people to flow through the building, so it is again a one-way system.
Nina, what kind of response have you had from your customers, the people who normally come to the gym? Because I'm sure a lot of people are going to be wary about coming back, aren't they? They're going to be anxious.
That's what we initially thought, so we've made sure we've had really good communication with our existing members through social media and emails and that type of thing, and just getting feedback all the way through this, particularly around people's mental health. We also have a dedicated app for booking, which is something that people felt that they wanted, so we've made sure that that's in place and people can book their slots. There's 1 hour time slots and we're limiting capacity, so that's one of the things people felt would enable them to come and feel safer in the building. We've limited it will have an impact on our income, but we're limiting our numbers in terms of how many members we'll have, so we can't, like gyms have done before, have lots and lots of members, because it wouldn't be safe for people, so we're limiting our capacity to 15 plus staff. But we've had a really, really good response. So obviously you see things that are happening in the news and people are saying they feel quite unsafe and they're not sure about going back to exercise. But as the news came through yesterday, we've let people know. Most of our members are coming back and they're happy to exercise. They have been taking advantage of our outdoor sessions that we've been running with one of our PTs as well. So that's great.
Mark, did you think, well, that is good to hear, Mark, do you think that people will rather get used to having more space, that then they won't actually welcome full capacity if indeed it ever does return?
I mean, that's always going to be a challenge, isn't it? Who knows what the future is going to look like, but if we're able to use the time better, so rather than everybody coming at the same time and people smooth it out throughout the day, then we could get the best of both worlds, couldn't we? But we'll have to see.
Well, I certainly like the idea of your wider lane, something to look forward to. Mark Sesnan and Nina Jeffries in Tinmouth, thank you both.
7:15 now. Non-essential retail in England has been open for a few weeks already, but evidence of just how tough it is came with the job losses announced yesterday at Boots and John Lewis, thousands of them. Rob Young has been looking at what the outlook might be for the sector. Rob?
Yes, since lockdown measures were eased, shoppers have returned to the high street, but nowhere near pre-pandemic levels. Data out this morning suggests in the second half of June there were only half as many visits to stores compared to last year. We can talk to Helen Dickinson, the Chief Executive of the British Retail Consortium. Morning, Helen.
Morning, Rob.
How serious is the challenge facing high streets?
Well, I think those numbers speak for themselves. So across the whole of June, footfall into shopping centres and high streets right across the country were down 60% overall. And there was a split between the sort of pre-lifting of restrictions when it was about 80% down on the same 2 weeks last year. And in the second half of the month, that fall had dropped to about 50-55%. But as you say, it's still half as much in terms of volume of people coming out. Retail parks are doing much better. High streets are catching up. London is at the bottom end, particularly because of the reliance on public transport. And so the real key now is seeing whether or not the lifting of restrictions around hospitality will take those numbers up further. But there is a long road ahead to get anything like a normal sort of volume of people, and hence a normal volume of sales for those businesses that rely on people coming in.